2018 Village of Webster regular meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. Jake, if you would lead us, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone would stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to put something first in front of public comment. We have a presentation tonight. Tomorrow we have to submit a grant application for the concept of Veterans Park. So this evening, Matt, would you like to present to us the application a little bit and some of the changes that have taken place and what we're looking at?
Is this on? Yeah. It's not on. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Matt Chatfield, Executive Director of the Webster Economic Development Alliance, the public-private partnership of the Town and Village, the School District, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Business Improvement District here in the Village of Webster. And typically we are tasked with providing assistance, technical assistance, and resources to the municipalities, town and village, towards the development of grant applications for capital funds that we request from federal and state governments. We are in the process right now of developing a grant application for improvements to Veterans Park here in the village. And we have, to that extent, we have actually already asked the village board to approve the expenditure of a small amount of money to hire a professional landscape architect, licensed in New York State, to assist us with the development of the grant application. And as part of that process, the professional consultant sat down with an advisory committee that was put together by the mayor. It did include members of the Parks and Rec Committee, as well as stakeholders within the community, and as well as village staff. So held a bunch of meetings, gathered a bunch of ideas. The designer took those ideas, created a concept, and then what we did is we then brought that concept out to the community, held a public open house, and solicited more feedback from stakeholder groups, including the veterans groups in the community, and then we revised the concept. So the concept that's in front of you today is still an idea. Okay, it's an idea that should help us better prepare for the application to New York State Parks Department, New York State Parks, and the funding is the Environmental Protection Fund. And our goal is to ask for a certain amount of money to help make improvements to Veterans Park. The concept in front of you, we have also put a conceptual price on that, order of magnitude cost estimate. You should each have one in front of you. If you do not, I may have an extra copy. So the concept itself is actually, I think, is somewhat exciting. So the opportunity is to enhance the space for both gatherings that could be used by the Business Improvement District, concerts in the park, movies in the park, other festivals, as well as enhance the experience for the veterans within our community by making improvements to both the Veterans Memorial, as well as providing additional improvements within the park to help tell the story about our local veterans and their experiences and their families over time. And the concept that we have come up with is called, what we're calling right now, simply, it's called the Warrior Walk, which would essentially circumnavigate that, the looping sidewalk that's in the middle. The interior of that looping sidewalk would, the concept includes kind of like a timeline of service where there would be a brick border inlaid, and then we could have etchings in the bricks and other pavements within the sidewalk to talk about a timeline of events of history and of service within of people within the community to those engagements around the world to support our freedom. And on the outside of the perimeter of the sidewalk, the goal was to create niches and small areas where we could have interpretive elements such as signs, maybe even public art, that tell the story about maybe either individual veterans within our community or or maybe even just events in town. And the goal would be, as we move forward with the project, to further engage the veterans organizations within our community to help dial that in and make sure that provide quite a bit of guidance on how we can go about doing that in a respectful and reverent way. So the hope is that this becomes a destination even more than it already is now. So a destination not only for people on Saturdays and Tuesday nights, but a destination year-round. You can put in some additional infrastructure, some shade on that gazebo area, so when we do have events during the summertime, the performers can come out front and center. And additional infrastructure as well to support events, additional power hookups, and such, so we can basically support year-round activity of this rather unique park in our community. The concept that you see in front of you has been given a price tag of, from soup to nuts, of the whole concept. I think the cost is $680,000, which is obviously well beyond what I think the village is capable of pulling off at the current time. So our goal was to do this in phased approaches. So bringing in the key elements, which would include the new walk that goes around the perimeter, the improvements and enhancements to the gazebo, as well as enhancements to the memorial area. And with construction and design, we anticipate an overall cost of approximately $446,000 for those improvements, as we have outlined in the cost estimate. The goal is to ask for a 50% match. Obviously, the board still needs to be comfortable with whatever amount we ask for. But right now, the request that we have penciled out is for $223,000 that would take place over the course of 2 budget cycles. Would include in-kind services of a roughly $53,000 of largely salary and wages time for the DPW's, the highway staff, as well as monies from budget line items, appropriations from the budget for fiscal years 2020 to 2021 and 2019 to 2020, and then an amount from the Parks Trust. Obviously, the goal is to minimize the impact to the trust, because that is very difficult to replenish, and there's other parks in the community that need money and resources put into them as well. So I think that's a pretty decent synopsis of where we stand today. I'd love to entertain any questions.
So where the bricks going? Are they moving over to?
So the concept for the memorial does include relocating the physical memorial. So it's front and center, right up on the sidewalk. Put it up in that northeast quadrant of the park. Okay. Now, we've talked about resetting those existing bricks into the pavements there. There's also been discussions about, what you see there is the memorial area includes the memorial monument as we have today. And then it also includes a wall. And the concept as we've come up with today is for a 30-foot long stone wall that would have a granite cap on it. And then the names that are in the bricks today would be etched into that granite.
Oh.
So in a more proper fashion, right? Now, so not on the ground, but raised up, probably 30 inches off the ground. And then etchings could continue to take place over time into the coping surface of that wall. So what happens with the existing bricks is still a point of discussion, whether or not they're reinstituted into the park somewhere. Maybe they're given back to the folks who paid for them. I mean, obviously, at this point, this is still very much trying to get our foot in the door. We're trying to put our best foot forward for an application for the funds. The full design process is far from completed. The full public participation process is far from completed. We've only begun to scratch the surface. What we have is a concept that we think we can get money for, and that is a really something that we can sell to the state is a really good idea, and then we can continue to modify it as we approach, being ready to actually put a shovel in the ground. step in the process is, on behalf of the village, I have filled out the consolidated funding application online. There's only two real items that that we really need to include. That is the final budget number of matching funds that the village would be willing to essentially commit to. As well as the mayor needs to give me his blessing to sign off on the certifications to submit the application.
Now, we're looking at phase one improvements, 323,000, and contingency, 372.
No, contingency,
Well, contingency is 48,
correct,
so we come up with 372. So.
right. That's for construction.
And then your design cost,
Yep.
additional 74. So our total initial is 446,000, right?
That's correct.
So half of that, 223, the other half, 223. Now, if we are applying for that, I'm trying to remember this, is that covering,
If you look in the
So the
yellow
wall
along the
phase-
side,
the wall
it
phase
should, it
two
should
wall.
tell you,
Yeah.
it should tell you right here what's included in that.
Yep. So what happens, they approve this, and maybe we can appropriate that, 56,000. Obviously look hard at the budget in order to come up with that beyond what we're already working on. What does that do? That just reduces the local match, which would reduce then what they would, I mean, this is a goal, correct?
Right. Obviously, so the next steps in the process are, the application is submitted, the application is reviewed, scored, and then if it is awarded funds, and the awarded funds might not be exactly what is asked for. They may decide to award 200,000 or none. Or they could fully fund it. The funding request is capped at $500,000, so that would be $1 million project. 50% of that you could request state support for, so for $500,000. We're not even a quarter of, or not even half.
Kevin, will you know what the balance is of the parks?
I think it's 120,000. Around 120,000.
Jake and I recently talked with the treasurer, with Chris about this, and she said minus existing funds to come out to pay the consultant, that I think it was less than $9,000 to pay the consultant for all of this work that she accomplished. I think she said it was roughly 115,000, 112 to 115 is what would be left after. Obviously, the great advantage of this is the timing, and that construction funds wouldn't need to be available until 2020, December, well, maybe, let's say, July of 2020 is when construction monies would need to be available for construction to start in September. So some monies would need to be made available up front for consultant services and design services. And that's still basically 2 budget cycles. The bulk of the money is 2 budget cycles away. So the hope was that there would be the opportunity to identify chunks of money that could be set aside over the course of 19 and 20 and 20 and 21. Rather than having the village try and come up with it in one lump sum in one budget cycle, which I think would be very painful and be very difficult for you to do that.
I don't think it's even doable.
I see certainly some items that can be reduced in cost, if they come back with, or looking to pare things down.
Are these numbers budgeted on the high side, hopefully?
They're conservative, but I wouldn't say they're extremely high. It's ensured that they're not too low.
So there'd be some savings there, and then you have to look at certain things in the face you don't want. But I think like Matt's saying, you have 2 budget cycles.
I guess I would defer down to Will down there. Have you heard anything regarding the proposed complex going in down near Phillips Village? Is that progressing at all in terms of?
You're talking about Brittany Woods?
Brittany Woods?
No, I haven't heard a thing.
Because I would dump someone.
Because that would be helpful in
Right, well, it
terms
would be.
of the park fund
And
and
we,
a number of other things.
and I don't know what the time schedule for all this is, but typically we receive the Parks and Rec fees at the C of O. So even if they started to build, I don't know how long it would take before we issued our first C of O.
It would be beyond
Because they would do
Right,
2020.
right, it would be, but it would be like, what I'm looking at is a replenishment of.
Oh, sure.
So go higher and then replenish, you know, that kind of thing.
It'd be 69 units, I
Right.
believe they were proposing.
What would that number be?
Well,
Park and rec fee?
$60,000 a unit.
Okay, 180 unit.
So, you know, that.
When does their time run out?
And requires-
They're getting close, aren't they?
Yeah, so, okay.
Then they hit the
Um,
whole thing again.
There are some things that I suppose we could put into phase 2 if we had to. And, you know, reallocate.
I mean, that's always, obviously,
Something that we want to go after.
Yeah, I think we want to go after it. My only concern is, so is make sure we don't deplete it, the parks fund so much that,
Well, this is only talking 56.8, so right now we're talking about half of what we have.
and what are the other needs
So
of
the other parts
parks?
are, how do we come up with, for 2 years, how do we come up with about 60,000 per year additional to what we already are spending? So consider that in our budget.
You donate some.
I'll take care of about what.
Well, that's what we have to start looking at now. I don't,
You know, I like the concept, I like this, the second picture. It gives a little bit more in terms of what this one proposed from a sky level as opposed to something there. And I know that the veterans, their concern was because they stand, they're looking. That was a concern that they had. And I think that was that Greg, I think, was on board with what we proposed as well.
I mean, I think we did have support from some members, some of the veterans.
Right.
Our goal would be to, obviously,
We'd have to
if
go
we were to
back
move
the-
forward, there'd have to be a significant amount of additional dialogue and,
Yep.
you know, back and forth, and make sure that, you know, we're giving due consideration to, you know, the needs and desires of all veterans, to the extent that we can, and still provide a viable design.
This looks like it's a significant reduction in the hillside, isn't it? You think it will be? I mean, there's a slope right now there. This looks as if it is relatively leveled out across there.
I don't think the intent was that,
drawing with the scale.
I mean, if you do see that there are vehicle headlights in the rendering, they do present themselves quite a bit higher than the remainder of the park.
Oh, yeah.
I don't believe the intention was to fill in the park. All the vegetation that's there, those mature trees were to remain.
Right.
Just design.
Well, I was just looking at the area that available for the event tent that you have put into the lawn area would include green.
I mean, that area, the physical area of lawn in the middle, yes. There is a reduction of that to accommodate the looping walk. I don't think there's no denying that the actual area of lawn would be smaller. It would be better configured, it would be contained, and it would all be facing
We
forward.
did change the planting from behind the walk to the retaining wall.
That was another comment that was made. Yeah, it should all
It would
be
be good.
Right.
I mean, that's,
less to maintain, and it's a durable surface, so when people are in the park, they can go pretty much wherever without worrying about trampling. The only plantings would be, the most intense plantings would be around the memorial, which I think is justified.
Looks good. Gives a match.
Obviously, there are opportunities to go for, well, I mean, to start, I mean, there's fundraising opportunities to help with the match. We do have the luxury, if you could use that word, of some time before the monies for construction are due. So obviously, private monies can come into play. And where practical, given an award of funds in December from New York State Parks, if there is another funding source that's identified, we would obviously go after that funding source as well to help offset the local match required. One particular source is the New York State Council of the Arts, and that typically is, the application opens in February or March and typically closes in April of each calendar year. Depending upon what elements of this are selected to move forward, that may be a viable source of matching funds. It wouldn't be a significant source, maybe $50,000.
Now, what if you got, I'm just thinking outside the box, some private donations from like maybe businesses, I'll just use it as an example, say Kittleberger Forest. How can we, you know, they're gonna donate 25 grand, just throwing this out there. How can we provide marketing for them? I mean, would that be viable? I'm just trying to think, or Buyers Incorporated donated 10 grand or whatever. I mean, we put banners up or?
Well, you can call it, you can name some things too, Kittleberger gazebo, the walkway could be named, you know, Barry's walkway. You can do
You
things.
could have a plaque with the.
Right.
So I'm just thinking, if they're gonna make a donation, you know, they're gonna want, not necessarily they want a lot of it, but, you know, the marketing,
Which we should do, name a trail, or put big rocks in here, put plants on.
I'm sure we could come up with
you know, if we needed a few
a
dollars.
thoughtful and tasteful way
Yeah,
to provide that recognition. I'm sure we can.
I don't see any cost for the clock. Am I missing it?
No, it is missing, it needs to be put in there. So we have a cost for the clock that needs to be included, and that was, we budgeted 18,000.
I mean, there were some ideas on budgeting for that clock.
Yep. So that is an omission, and it is recognized, and I do need to include that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good naming rights right there.
Buyer's clock.
And at least initially, if it's needed, we would probably swap out that sort of gateway structure with the clock from a cost perspective. And the gateway structure could be a second phase.
So we'll be putting a second stage on.
Yeah, my goal wouldn't be to move the number up anywhere from where it is currently, only down.
Yeah, I was trying to work down here.
Nice
For some
sales
donations.
skills. See what else is
So what do you think? Move forward?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll apply, we'll see what
Yeah.
comes of it. We can move forward after that and make any modifications we need to do. At least move forward.
Any additional questions? Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, good job.
Did everybody get a chance to see this, pass it around, take a look at it? I don't know if it, this hasn't changed too much since I think what we had a little bit of a change from the public open house that we had for that. And this gives, I think this gives a nice rendition. One thing missing in here is that,
Flagpole.
here,
Yeah.
I believe,
Yeah, that's
there should be a flagpole.
Flag.
The flagpole was missing just about there. And where the clock would be. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, all right, let's move on then to public comment. We'll open the floor to anyone who would like to address the board tonight. Come up, state your name, and talk to us.
Richard Walder, 20 Elm Street. I noticed and go along with your concern on this project. The park does need improvement, and I agree we should do something with it. But I'd just like to remind, as you didn't indicate it in this manner, but since we switched from the water about 4.5 years or so ago, I don't know about everybody else, but my village fees have gone up over 50% what I pay the village on my tax bill. So I'm glad to see that you are trying to keep projects under control and hope that you continue to do so.
Right.
It is needed improvement, and I'll agree with that, and I hope that you can find the funding to do it without severe to the taxpayers.
Our goal.
I hope so. What I wanted to get up and talk about tonight was the great editorial in the paper that spent several pages talking about the Fireman's Carnival. However, we missed a major news story this last couple of weeks. A historic water tank, the old water tower in the village, is practically gone. Over the last 2 weeks, it's been being taken down, and I think that should not go unmentioned. And I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. Who is actually doing the work? Is that the county or the village? It is our, after all, the tank is owned by the village. Who is doing the work? The county?
That's the county.
The county, and who is getting the funds for the scrap, great deal of scrap metal?
I believe that would be whoever is taking it down.
If there is surplus, does that go to from the scrap metal is more forward than the cost, does that go to the county or us because it's our tank? Technically, it's our tank, they only leased it.
If you would go back to the original document, it was, there were 5 years that we had in which if we had our antennas off of that small tank, then they would pay the cost to take it down. So they are paying the cost.
The original
If we
agreement
were
said
to do it,
3
we could have the scrap metal, but we would have the cost of taking it down.
is
Whether
much-
that
much
comes out as a wash, I.
No, it's not.
But I just wanted to make everybody that may be watching or see this video aware that this has come down. And
And do we have a little bit of that tonight? Will?
I have some pictures on me. I don't know if I can get them on the screen, but I don't have the video of the piece coming down.
Oh.
and
He did such a, maybe it'll be next meeting.
Yeah.
Will did put together a little documentary, about a minute and a half of the tank coming down.
okay.
We'll try to get that up for
There are some of us that still remember when the large tank went up back in the 50s. And the only other thing I wanted to mention, already was mentioned, Brittany Woods is about up on their 1 year. You have that date available?
I want to say it's August 8th. somewhere
Okay,
around.
so they would have to reapply and start over with a new plan.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sorry about
Peter Elder, Dunning Avenue. I just wanted to congratulate the whole village. I saw a lot of members of the board at the Jazz Fest. And it was just, until it started that last little bit of heavier rain at the end there, it was just an outstanding event. So I want to recognize that event because I also want to, I'm sure maybe you were going to mention this later, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I also want to thank Tom Spoonhauer for all the work he does in putting it together. Tom's a former president of the Business Improvement District, and he has just done an outstanding job at making this event happen year after year. I don't know exactly what the attendance was, but the number of events that I've gone to, which is a lot, I would say it had to be in the 5,000 range at least again. And that's something to put 5,000 people on West Main from the Four Corners down to, say, NOCO is not even really down to the Village Hall, really, is something. So it was a huge achievement, and I think a lot of you were there, and I just want to recognize that, and hopefully you probably were going to, because I don't mean to steal your thunder, but it's just such a great event that we do here in the village. So.
I believe it's 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's been around that time, because I remember the first one, because I volunteered like every one of them in some capacity. This time he had me backstage guarding the musicians' instruments for a couple hours, so I'm like, well, who's going to take their instruments? But anyways, so I got to see people coming up and down the back of the stage, and he was telling me about all the different mics that are back there and all that kind of thing. But anyway, so but it is a great event, and I think it does good justice to our village and just the activity that we have here, and all that we have to offer. So
I would agree, and I think he's looking for help, isn't he, for next year, maybe?
he probably is, because I don't think this is a big secret, but Tom is retiring, and he's been in his business for an awful long time, and he works awfully hard down there. I mean, I don't know how many of you ever visited him. I'm sure many of you have. And he has made a business out of a really interesting niche kind of business, and he's done very well over the years. And he's done great at making contacts with the school district and all kinds of other places around to keep that business going. And I think he does lacrosse, doesn't he? So Al's probably got some.
He did swimming.
there many times.
All right, he did swimming for you, he does that. So I'm suspecting that in the future, he probably will be looking for some help and some people to learn the ropes, because at some point, all things, you have to kind of move on at some point.
And it begins now,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
His planning pretty much begins
Yeah, it
pretty
does.
soon.
Well, because yes, some of those bands, I don't know if everybody realizes, are very large, very kind of nationally recognized type bands, and you have to get them on the schedule the year before, otherwise they get scooped up by somebody else. So, yeah. Next big event we have is the Trick or Treat Trail. I'll come back, that's mine, so I will come back and give you an update when we do that. I will give you a preview though. We're going to go back to doing doggies this year. So we're going to do the doggy wean thing because we've closed off Main Street now. So we're going to invite everybody to costume up your dogs, and no ferrets. That's the limit. We can't do small animals. If you want to dress up your ferret, they do make costumes for ferrets, so we can't do that. And we don't want to have the cats with the dogs, so it's just going to be dogs. But we can march them down Main Street now, right to the park, and hopefully do something like we did in the past, where we have some prizes for best dog costumes. So it is very popular when we did it. So it's a really cool event to do. So.
Al has volunteered to be a pooper scooper.
Thank you, Al. That's excellent. You're going to use your lacrosse stick? Okay, excellent. All right, perfect. All right. Be sure to give one to Jerry.
The 90th, I believe, while we're kind of doing announcements, is it the 90th anniversary or 50th anniversary for Kittleburgers?
I think it's the 90. And
that dovetails, we'll put the announcement in early, that dovetails with the wine walk, which is August 11th, the
That's
next
right.
one. And August 9th, there will be a concert down in Veterans Park. The 10th, there's another concert in Veterans Park, and then the 11th, down at Kittleburgers. You'll be having food trucks down there, there will be bands down there, and fireworks on that Saturday night as well, after the wine walk. So, big weekend coming up, as well as the waterfront, it's not ours, but the waterfront
But it's very close.
art festival is coming this weekend.
Yeah, a lot of people from the north part of the village is where a lot of our newest residents are. Right, they can walk to that waterfront art festival pretty much almost to their backyards. So All right, thank you.
Thank you. It was a huge success, and just listening to a couple of the food people from the bid, they were selling out and had a great night in terms of sales, people going to every one of them, and so that was awesome.
It was very good. A lot of good feedback.
Yeah, very good. All right, then I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting. We'll move on to regular village board business at this time. First of all, we have a resolution to approve the minutes of July 10th, which involves the organizational meeting and then our meeting after that. So if you would take a look at that, hopefully you have already through them. I have no comments regarding it, anything to add or? And I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the July 10th organizational and board meeting.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, we have a resolution to approve the claims and warrants. I looked at them on the screen, did not sign them. Jerry, Al, I believe you did. Does anyone have any questions or comments you want to ask? Anyone regarding?
I do not have any questions.
Not a big deal, but I figured I'd ask. Keep taking the claim. Exodius exterminating from 175, or Yellow Jacket.
There was some sort of demon wasp that was out on Main Street the morning of the parade, or that was morning. They were, I figured out they're called a golden digger wasp. They were probably about that big, right along where everybody's been sitting, so we called them up and said, get rid of these guys. I don't know what they were, but they were down right near, in front of 256 East Main Street, down a couple houses from Mobile. But they were, I went out there, I've never seen these things before ever in my life. They were kind of freaky looking, to be honest with you, so.
Little airplane.
Yeah, they were huge. You know, I got some pictures.
Yeah, they were.
Oh, yeah.
They're some scary things, but that's what that was for.
What's it called again? Oh, what?
I think a golden digger wasp,
Demon wasp.
demon wasp, yes. They were something else.
If there are no other questions, then I would entertain a motion to approve the claims and warrants.
I'll make that motion. I'll second it.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Well, the financial statements for June are included. I only had one particular question that was answered for me, and that was an appropriation line on page 1, clerk and treasurer equipment. It shows we appropriated $6,622.43, and we have used it, but there was nothing in the line that goes there. And I believe I was told that was for the microfiche equipment that we approved. So, other than that, I don't have any particular questions about it. So,
The company called and said our machine is ready and we can pick it up. We may need to get a new screen for it because the computer screen we have right now is pretty small for Will to be able to see the maps. But we'll let you know for sure.
anyone else? All right, and we'll move on. Good to see the financials are in pretty good shape at this point. We're just starting our year. Okay, we are into a discussion regarding travel meal reimbursement. I believe that there has been some degree of interpretation, various interpretations regarding this policy in our handbook, travel policy 616, regarding reimbursement for meals. This was something that came up a while back. Many of you remember that I put an email out regarding the fact that bills came in and there was no original receipt, and I asked for original receipts in order to reimburse. I believe that was with Joan Neal and her travel. And the question is, in some cases, they have a per diem, and they just take the per diem in total, and they don't submit the original receipts, and then you might submit the original receipt and get reimbursed up to that predetermined max, which the IRS is. So this has arisen again. One of the things that I have a concern about in terms of the per diem, when you go to the IRS, you look at where you're going, you look at when you're going there, and they have a particular value which they give for per day total. So if you say, well, we're going to go and I have $51 for the day, let's say you do go, and in many cases this is what happens, in many instances I suppose, but you go and you have $51, whether you spend it all or not. My concern is that if you go and you don't spend $51, you go and you have an $8 breakfast, which could be large, you go to the Little Boys and get you go to lunch and you go to dinner and it turns out to be $38. You now, and you have 51, let's say. Okay? So there's the differential. Okay? If you're doing it per day, you pocket that. Okay? If you're not doing it per day, if you're looking at original receipts, you're not going to pocket that. Now, if you're pocketing $11 because you say, well, this is what I have to spend, I don't spend it all, so I'm going to keep that. Is that fair for the taxpayers? I don't know. So that's a concern that I have. We're getting money, we're not using that money is going to an individual, and it's not our money to necessarily give away. Also, if you're doing it per day, so you give them $51, we have a policy that says unauthorized expenses, elected officials, employees and members of appointed boards, and that's just about everybody who's going to go to anything, will not be reimbursed for expenses such as alcoholic beverages. And if you have a per diem, you don't know what it's being spent on. If you're using a credit card, for example, you get a bill on that credit card from a particular restaurant, and it's a total bill, and you don't know what it was spent on. And so, yes, you could have 3 beers while you're there, or whatever, and so we don't have an accounting of that, other than, is it ethical? No, it's not ethical to do it, but I think it has happened. So that's a concern that I have with things that have happened. So, anyways, bring this up. Heather has proposed some changes, or looked at them. I don't know if we'll take a look at them, but I don't know how you feel about it. I don't. There are different points of view on it.
You should change, you must provide a receipt to a detailed receipt.
I wrote itemized right here to add to it, thank
Okay.
you. I just thought of that, yeah, because it could be used in something.
I don't have a problem going somewhere and, there's a standard the government has, as I said, for a particular time, for a particular place, per day. You want to spend up to that while you're going, as long as you have original receipts and it doesn't include the items that they talk about here. I have no problem with that. My problem would be using that as kind of an extra income situation, where you don't use it, you're reimbursed for it. Or you don't itemize and you're doing some things that probably shouldn't. And by the way, that should be a pay per view.
And I think the issue is just that it's a little broad, because if you're using the IRS website, if you're going per diem, you don't have to provide receipts. But how Mayor Byers and I interpret is that, because in our policy, it states you need to provide a receipt. So I think there was a lot of confusion between the whole village, and I just think it needs to be cleared up. Whatever you guys decide is fine with me. I just think that we should have it be consistent for everybody.
Yeah.
Sounds like we're all in agreement. Sounds like we're all in agreement.
So we should have original receipts. If you go out and you are getting, you're having a meal, have an original receipt, turn it in. We're not limiting at this point how much you're spending for that meal, up to a particular maximum, which is what's out there. We're just asking for the original receipt of it. Or it's a deal.
And they do have per area, like on one request, that it does specify, differentiate what area, so.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
time of the year as well,
Yep.
actually.
Okay, so I can, if you'd like, I can rewrite the policy and submit it to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on that, no? If you will, I believe that we received from our Cohen group, correct? A document for initially looking at, a draft, and were we sending that to the whole board? You haven't looked at it yet, probably. I
No,
just saw it
I got
today,
the
actually,
email
and
late
began to
today.
look at it, and I saw the page after page as it was scrolling, and I said, no, that's gonna take a little bit of time to look at, but, Don, did you get a copy of it?
Yeah, I got it, I haven't had a chance to look at
Okay.
it, it was late this afternoon.
It was, and I was just looking through it. So, okay, that's great, we're moving forward, and they have provided that in a very timely
Yeah, it was
manner.
a pretty quick turnaround.
And so we'll begin looking at that, and probably make you guys aware of it as well. You can kind of look it over, because they're gonna ask for feedback and refinement and all that. That's awesome, though. That's very good, moving quickly with that. Anything else you want to bring up in a moment? I would say, okay, then we'll move to our attorney.
The only comment I have is the board needs to, at some point in the not too distant future, decide what you're doing about septic receiving station. I haven't heard anything.
Has everybody received looked at the copy of the report that Clem gave to the board?
Yes.
We all looked at that. We do see that there's a differential. His numbers for a site off of our land down there for the sewer treatment plant, I believe between 1 and 1.2 million, depending upon whether or not there's electric, right? Is that the electric included?
Yeah, it was moving telephone poles that may be in the way. There's high power lines that run down along that corridor there between the Old Donovan Street and the extension of Orchard Street there.
And then we're doing it on-site with the building at 880,000, so was it about right, 188, 60, something? So there was a significant difference between the two, and would be a cost savings even if we decided to pay that extra amount that they were asking for. One thing that
That's not a decision, you would have to pay that.
no, I'm just saying.
But the way you phrased it, you said, if we decided to pay it,
No,
you would have to pay it.
If we decided to go there, it would be, we would benefit by doing it on site. So, I'm sorry.
Well, true. Yeah, the 880,000, you in effect have to add 65,000 to that to compare the two.
And that would be less than
places.
what we proposed
Yeah,
offsite.
it's-
However,
it was-
I also want to point out to the board that with the exception of the building, everything else was put into the proposed development, the initial study that was done. It was a proposal to, at the head, put in a holding tank, put in septic receiving. So what we need to do is add a building to that. So really, the cost, a lot of that cost is already included in what that original study gave, that 3.8 million or whatever it was that we were talking about for all of those improvements. So a lot of that was already there. It's a consideration that we have to think about, and the timeline is into August, so it's coming up. Thank you, guys. Anything else? Suzanne? So I would suggest you take a look back at the study that Glenn put out originally a year ago for the sewer treatment plant. And look at the drawings and the original plan and see what was included in that and what we're looking to do. All right. Clerk, anything else from the office?
Yes, I signed up for a National Treasure membership. Chris also participates in it so that I can start attending trainings for that. So that it's $50 for the year, I think. So that they provide and offer different types of trainings for treasurers. So I'm going to start doing that. And then the NICOM schedule came out, and there are lots of trainings that I'm looking forward to, but in addition, the treasurer trainings that I'll let you know.
That fits in with what we were talking about. Okay, Will.
Okay, so it was a banner month for permits this month. It was 22 permits, which works out to a permit every day per working day. This month was last month, so that was good. I'm just about done with the Unified Solar Permit Code. I just got to tweak a few of the percentages as far as the bulk regulations are concerned and the location of the solar panels when they're ground mounted as opposed to roof mounted. So just tweaking some of that, but it's just about done, which I'm glad. I did the final CMO for the Village Bakery, so you'll be happy to know that that'll be opening hopefully next week.
July
sometime.
31st. I saw on Rock Soul website today. Next Tuesday.
Maybe.
Maybe.
There's a ribbon cutting ceremony, and we get to sample some of the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Long awaited.
We should
Yeah.
probably.
Is
it'd
there a
be
ribbon
nice to do
cutting?
that. I could suggest it, I'm sure Charlie would be more than happy to do that. They just have to take care of a couple of other things from the fire marshal side, and then they'll be all set. As you mentioned, I received an email from Mike Roberts, the attorney for Cohen Law Group, and they submitted the initial draft for the wireless facilities management ordinance. So we'll be working our way through that. Everybody's going to receive a copy of that so they can get an idea of what that looks like. Don already has a copy, so that's even better. And as also was mentioned, Sandhill, Brittany Woods, their expiration date, as I said, I think it's August 8th, it's somewhere around there, which means if we don't get a copy of a letter of credit that the board can approve, then they have to go through the whole process all over again because they would lose their approvals. So, but other than that, that's basically all I've got.
They're pretty much aware of that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Will.
By the way, thank you for staying on top of Property Town. on the east end of the village.
Oh,
And,
for the
right in the border there of,
Yeah. Thank you.
periodically, it's quite a nice one. Okay, Jake, the Public Works, you need to report to us.
Just North Avenue's progress, we had a progress meeting yesterday, and over some of the items there. That project's going along, they're still planning on the schedule. Because of the later start, the substantial completion and final completion dates have moved early on before they even started, but they're still on target, they say, for August 22nd. You should start to see light poles going up next week. And the final completion is September 15th, and they're trying to hit that target with everything they're doing in the pavilion there. So that's moving along. Curtis Park, the gutters are in on one side, and we're pulling them out on the other side, and they're gonna be prepping that for pavement, so that's moving along as well.
You're gonna have that whole thing done the Main Street?
No,
Eventually, or are you just gonna add?
we're doing the Fuller Avenue this year, last year or 2 years ago. Excuse me, no, to Fuller. We went through Fuller all the way across and then made T's out, and now we're tying that into that T, and then we're gonna do the other part. We got, when we did the water switch over, we talked to the water authority about Curtis Park. There's a 4-inch water main on the end near Harmon Street. So we wanna make sure that that's changed and upgraded before we pave that portion of it. So we make sure that gets in their schedule too, and have more discussions with them about that, so. But then next year, we're planning on at least down Foley's or down to the curb, at the end there, and then we'll get that little section of Curtis after the water main's complete. It's gone through a freezing thaw cycle. They'll have to settle, they always do.
Something like Dunkin' Donuts? Something like in front of Dunkin' Donuts?
Yes. And that was actually me, I put a moat in front of it to keep other people away from the Boston creams, but.
All right, thank you. Anything from sewer?
Sorry, just a quick update I want to share with the board. I know we had a discussion last October, towards the end of the year, about BODs. That's biological oxygen demand. That's a measure of the efficiency of the plant and how the treatment's going. There were concerns about BOD levels, and we had utilized different levels to get different, to get the results. To utilize different labs to look at different results and see what they were comparing to what our history had been and see where they're going. We talked to the town, it was about a month ago. They actually changed bottles for the effluent BODs. It's a measurement, that's what's leaving the plant. And as soon as they changed the bottles, the BOD levels went right back down to where they're consistent with the ALS lab that we're using, consistent with our histories have been. So I think we got to the bottom of that one. After quite a while, it turned out maybe it was 30 bottles at the lab there. So we're hopefully going to be changing the other ones. And those are numbers that we utilize to adjust our treatment as well. Once you see what influent BOD is, what the strength of the waste is coming in, and what your treatment to leaving, you can make adjustments to your treatment process based on what you're achieving or not achieving. So having reliable numbers is very important to the operation of the plant. So it's good that those are back on track, and we have that we have confidence in them now.
You didn't get any feedback from the town, did you? Like, we're sorry that maybe we should have listened and we made a change and maybe you were right?
No.
That cost us that was at least 2 extra companies that we went to so that we could verify our numbers, that we were doing it correctly. So, it's significant for us.
Yeah, we did. When we first split up, we were splitting the samples 4 ways, and we sent them to 4 different labs to make sure that, because it was out of whack with what our history had been and what our experience had been, so.
Well, we corrected?
Yep.
Good. Looking good.
Thanks.
One of the things that came up at the bid meeting was about businesses, and I would, again, reiterate, we did this before. We put this out in front of the public and in front of the businesses, and that is that we would encourage any business that would like to come and present their business before the board, especially new businesses. You're welcome to do that. We would love to have you come, make your presentation, what it is you do. We have the Village Bakery coming, 2 Zen Chicks, I believe, at some point, might be coming into East Main. I remember that the Holistic, Marge Pickering came in, gave a presentation. Her business, she's been persistent with it, and it's doing well after the 4 or 5 years now. So, you know, I would encourage any businesses out there that are new, that would like to come. You're welcome to do so. Present yourselves to us and to the village as well. Okay. So put that out there to the bid. Business, just any businesses that are coming in. And also to those that exist now. You want to come in and promote yourselves. I would give, again, kudos to Tom and Carl and any other volunteers, and there are a lot who do volunteer for the Jazz Fest, but movies will be going again, right, I believe. They canceled the one on Tuesday because of the threat of rain and so on, but movies are up. Concerts are going in August. Of course, we're looking for the trick-or-treat trail and all those colorful dogs that are dressed up. How about cats? No, too small.
If I could figure out a way for the dogs and the cats not to fight, so if you have any ideas, let me know.
I've got a cat that's like a dog.
Well,
I think it's like a dog.
so the question is, where do you stop? Do you tell people they can't, what if they dress up their snakes? I mean,
Anything else that you guys have?
birds.
Bring up here at the end?
Oh, sure.
Opportunity to do that. All right. Well, in that particular case then, next board meeting will be the 9th of August. The September or the July 31st workshop has been canceled. We don't have any items apparently that we will be discussing that day. So our village board meeting is the 9th of August and the 23rd. You are welcome to contact the village. Any concerns that you have, please do so. Our emails are up as well, and we'll try to respond to you in a timely fashion. So thank you for watching, thank you for coming, and I entertain a motion to close the meeting.
Make that motion.
Whatever.
All right, Carl.
6.
You're still here.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.